because dad works there at the school. So anyways, August 21st, get up. I tell my son, all right, Andrew, it's time to go to school. He says, Mommy, I can't get up. So I'm like, okay, this kid doesn't want to go to school again. I'm like, Andrew, you have to get up. We have to go to school. You can't be missing school, baby. He still has the hives everywhere now. The only place he never got him was his face. So I'm like, okay. I said, baby, you have to get up. We have to go to school. Come on, it's going to be late. Mommy, really, I can't get up. So I'm like, okay. So I'm like, okay, here, I'll help you out. So as I help him out to get out of bed and stuff, so I grab him and he just falls. Like his legs are weak. And I'm like, Andrew, are you okay, baby? And I'm like, oh my God, this is not okay. I'm still like trying to figure out, and I'm like, okay. So I stand him up again, and you know, once he starts walking, like making like baby steps, like if he was barely learning how to walk, he starts getting it. Like he starts doing step by step. So he gets to the kitchen, and I look at my mom, and I'm like, Mom, Andrew can't walk. I'm like, he's getting sick. I go, and I don't know what's going on. I'm like, everything is normal. So she looks at me, she's like, everything's gonna be fine. You know, just take him to the hospital. So I'm like, okay. So I asked my sister, which I thank her so much, because I think I would go crazy if I didn't have her in my life. You know, thank you so much for always being there for me since my first kid. Oh my God, this is so hard, you guys. So she's like, yeah, let's go. So we go to the hospital. I take him there. It's Loma Linda Hospital. I take him there and I show them right away. We get into the ER and I show them. I go, he's had hives for so many months. They're getting worse and he's getting temps. And this morning he couldn't walk. So they said, is this the first time? I said, no. I said, you know, he's had it multiple times. I said, but now he can't walk. So they said, okay. They rush him into a bed. They start working him up. So I'm crying. The ER doctor comes and says, why are you crying, Mom? So I'm like, why? I said, because my son is a normal, healthy kid, and all of a sudden he can't walk. He has hives. He has temps. I said, that is why I'm crying. So I explained to him. I told him the whole thing. You know, he had gone to an allergist. And then I told him, I'm like, oh, he has an appointment on Wednesday to see the allergist. He says, okay, Mom, can I get the number for the allergist? I said, okay, sure. So I give him the number for the allergist. So he says, I'll be back. I'm going to go talk to the allergist. So they're going to work him up. They're going to do everything. He comes back and says, Mom, we can't work him up. And I said, what do you mean you can't work him up? No, the allergist wants to see him. So he had an appointment. I took him the 21st, which was Monday. He had an appointment on Wednesday. So he says, allergist wants to see him. He doesn't want us to work him up. She doesn't want me to do anything. So we have to discharge. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to take my son and he can't walk. So we take him. And he's in a wheelchair. So as I get home, he continues to get worse. So I call his pediatrician and she says, okay, you know, just continue everything, follow up with the allergist. So Wednesday comes, his whole body is just numb. My husband goes with me to the allergist. I'm already livid. I'm upset. So from where my husband parked to the office, my son couldn't walk. So my husband is injured from his back. So I don't know how he did it. Maybe God was with us and he continues to be with us. But he carried him from the car all the way to the office. He couldn't walk. So I signed him in. His appointment was at 11. Sorry, that's probably my husband or my oldest son making that noise. So his appointment was at 11. At 11:15, they call me in. So my husband carries him from the waiting room to the room. The allergist comes in and she says, "Hi, Mom." I looked at her and I said, "You didn't want my son to get worked up? Here he is. What do you want to do?" She looked at me with like that fear, like this mom is fucking upset. Excuse my French, but that's how I was. I said, "You told them not to work up my son. Here's my son. My son is bad." And she says, "This is where I said I was upset and I didn't know if I'm going to report her or not." So she tells me, "Did we draw blood work on him?" I said, "Yes, we did a month ago, and I'm still waiting for you to call me whether they were normal or not. I still haven't got a call from you." She looks at me with this look like, I did order blood work? It's like, who the fuck you think you're playing with? Like, seriously? I'm like, no. So I said, with or without your consent, I will take my son to the hospital. And you better not stop any care. And she looked at me and she says, "No, Mom. You need to take him to the ER because he doesn't look good." I said, "No shit. He's been like this since Monday and you stopped the care because you wanted to see him." So she gives me this paper and she says, "Take it to the ER. They're waiting for you. We're going to roll out mono." So I'm like, okay. I show up into the ER and I said, "Doctor called in. Here's the paperwork. He needs to be admitted." So they call him in. They take him into the ER. They weigh him, everything. They draw blood work, everything. They start an IV on him. They give him fluids. They said he's dehydrated because he's not even eating now because he says it's hard for him to eat and swallow. So I'm like, okay. So they tell me, well, we're going to roll out mono, but it's going to take, a few days for us to get the results. I said, okay. So I'm thinking, oh, he's going to get admitted, at least 23-hour hold, and then they'll discharge him. No, 7:30. I'm like, they come in and they said, "Well, Mom, we don't really have a diagnosis. We can't admit him." So I'm like, okay, my son can't walk. He's dehydrated. And we're going to roll out mono, but you don't have a diagnosis? I said, okay. So for those that also know me, I work in the medical field. So I call this doctor that I'm very close to. She's a female. And I'm texting her and I'm like, my son is very sick. So she's texting me back and she's telling me, you need to do this and this and this. So I'm like, okay. So I go back and I'm like, "Did you guys check for this and this and this?" And they said, "Yes, Mom, everything is normal." I said, "How can everything be normal if my son can't walk?" And they said, "Well, we don't have a diagnosis, so you're going to be discharged." I said, okay. So I take my son home. I will show you guys pictures of how he was when they discharged us and also how he got there. I will show you guys pictures. So at this point, I'm like in denial. I don't know. I'm like numb. So, I'm like, whatever. We're going home. Okay, So my sister's mad at me. My mom's like, you're always defending people, this and that. When they're sick, you're always pushing and pushing. This is your son. You need to stand up for him. So then I'm like, okay. So that was Wednesday. So I bring him home. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday goes by. And he's still the same. He's bed rest. My husband's here, so he's looking at me like, who the hell are you talking to? So then he's still the same. So I'm like, okay, he's not getting better. So he's not getting better. So I call my mom and I'm crying, and I call the doctor, my friend doctor, and I'm like, what do I do? She's like, you need to go back to the ER and tell them you're not taking him home. So I'm like, okay. So I call his pediatrician again and I tell her, look, my son is not good. He's getting worse. Now I'm getting very upset because I'm like, you know, people are bullshitting me. I'm like, how can you tell me my son is fine and he's not? Okay? I lived with him for 8 years. I know this is not my son. My son is hyper. Now my son is completely bed rest. He's not moving. He just turns to the side to urinate. He's not even going to the bathroom to pee. I can't even go like this because he screams. So I'm like, something is freaking going on with my son and you're going to tell me he's normal? No. So she says, bring him in. We have to draw blood work. I said, okay. And he's like, more blood work, Mom? And I'm like, yes. So I'm at my mom's and I'm like, okay, by now my brother has to help me carry him to the car. And he says, what's wrong with him? I'm like, I don't know, babe. I said, if I knew what was going on, I would tell you. I'm mad at everyone because they're asking me what's wrong and I don't have an answer. So he's like, you have to get an answer, you know. My brother's even telling me. And I'm like, I know. So they draw blood work on him. And they tell, you know, she calls me. And she says, you have to take him to the ER. He is not doing good. All his blood work is high. So I'm like, okay. So I'm crying. I'm like, and my son tells me, he gets up and goes to the bathroom. And he looks at me and he tells me, Mommy, am I going to die? And I looked at him and I said, you're not going to die. I said, I'm here with you and we're going to go all the way. I said, nothing's going to happen. What do you tell an 8-year-old that tells you, is he going to die? I said, we're in it together. I said, and we're going to find out what's going on. So we go into the children's hospital and they get him immediately. They take us into the room. The doctor that seen him that week when they discharged him, he came and he's like, oh, you guys are back. And I said, yes. I said, but the one that took over you discharged us because she didn't have a diagnosis. And he said, and I looked at him and I said, I'm not taking my son home. And he looked at me and said, and I told him, I said, and if you discharge me, I will follow the chain of command. I said, and it's not going to be nice. And he looked at me and said, Mom, we're not going to discharge you. We're going to find out what's going on with him. And he said, did we tell you last time that it could be Kawasaki disease? And I'm like, no, you never told me that because you left and the other doctor took over. And he says, well, that's what we think. So I Googled it and I'm like, my son doesn't have a strawberry lip, a strawberry tongue. I said, there's no way he has Kawasaki disease. So he said, well, you know, he had an infection that he was trying to fight. So, you know, but that's all cleared. And I'm like, okay, so then why is he like this? I go, he can't even feel his legs. His legs are swollen now. I go, his hand is swollen. And I looked at my husband and I'm like, I'm not ready to plan a funeral for my 8-year-old. My husband, you know, tried to be so supportive. And he was. But I think so much of trying, he just lost it. He cried and, you know, it's normal, you know. He cried and said everything's going to be okay. So he got admitted that same night. They asked us, does anybody have cancer? You hear cancer, you're like, my 8-year-old has cancer. And I said, my uncle died of leukemia. I said, my grandma passed away as well, breast cancer, and it spread everywhere. So they said, okay, we're going to do an MRI. and we're going to do a lumbar puncture because we think, you know, he probably has a mass. And I said, okay. I said, my 8-year-old has cancer. And then they take him. So my husband, like, I have to go home and get the other kids ready for school because I have 3 boys. So he's like, I have to go home, get clothes, and take it to your mom's. I said, okay. So I'm like, I'll just keep you posted of what happens. So then they take us and they take him to do the MRI. It felt an eternity, you guys. Seriously, it seemed forever. I said, can I be there when you guys do the MRI? And they said, you could be there up to the point where we have to put him to sleep because he might not be able to, you know, do the MRI complete. So I said, okay. I never thought they were going to put him to sleep in front of me. So anesthesiologist tells me, okay, Mom, you could come in, you know, and once we're ready to put him to sleep, you're going to come out. I said, okay. So he looks at me, and the only thing he said to me was, I love you, Mommy. And they put him to sleep. It felt like if he had died. His head just collapsed. And then they tell me, okay, Mom, you could step out. They said, you have to go to the waiting room. We'll come get you when he's out. So I'm like, okay. They come out. By now, my husband's already there with me, and he's like, you know, it's taking so long. You know, they told you it was going to be, you know, like an hour. It took them like 2 hours because they took him in like at 9:30, and he didn't come out till like 10:45 or 11, something like that. So I'm like, okay. So nurse came, she got me, she took me into the recovery room. He was there, and I'm like, hi, baby, I'm here. Hi, Mommy. So we go back to the room, and then they tell me, okay, Mom, we're going to do the lumbar puncture. Do you want to do it now, or do you want to wait for tomorrow? I said, well, he's still asleep, you know, let's just do it now and get it over with. And they're like, okay. So they start they get him ready, they put him in the gurney to transfer him to the room where they're going to do the lumbar puncture. So lumbar puncture is, you know, where they inject a needle on your back, of your spine, and they draw out the fluid. So they take him in, and I could hear him screaming. My husband's covering his ears. He's like, I don't want to hear him scream. He's already gone through so much. And I'm like, I don't want to hear it either. So he starts screaming, you know, and I'm like, I just go in. I can't go in the room. And I just go and tell one of the nurses, I said, can you please go in the room and just tell him to stop? I said, enough. I said, my son's already gone through so much. So she goes and she tells him, and she comes out and says, Mom, they're almost done. Do you really want them to stop? And I said, well, he's screaming. I go, he's in so much pain. So she says, they're almost done. They already, you know, they're already taking out the fluid. I said, okay. So they're done. They put the Band-Aid, everything. And then the next morning they come and they tell me, Mom, everything came out normal. There's no mass. There's nothing. All right, guys. So they say he has no mass. So I'm like, what's going on with my son? Why can't he walk? You know, why can't he be himself? So then I start talking to the doctor that I know, and I start telling her the LP came back negative, MRI is negative, and she says, you need to ask for an ANA, you need to ask for ferritin levels, you have to ask for all this like rheumatoid stuff. And I'm like, okay. So I started asking the nurses, and you know, they look at me and they're like, why is she asking all this? Does she know this stuff? So finally, one of the nurses goes, do you work in the medical field? And I said, I don't think it matters if I work in the medical field or not. I said, can you guys please do this stuff? So she says, we have to tell the doctors. Keep in mind they have no doctors. Well, they do, but it's residents that come and see the kids. And then, you know, the doctors if they need to. So she's like, we have to ask one of the residents and see. And then she goes, but mom, you know, you have to keep in mind that it's like a pyramid. You know, we start from like the worst and then move up forward. So I'm like, look, I'm not getting no answers here. I said, I need you guys to do an ANA, ferritin. I need you guys to do all that. So I'm breaking my head. I'm like Googling stuff because I'm like, hives, fevers, you know, everything. He can't walk. I'm like Googling all this stuff. So then it says, you know, it could be arthritis. So I'm like, okay, so I'm texting the doctor. I'm like, okay, maybe it's this and this. And she's like, well, Jenny, we need to get an ANA. Okay, we need to make sure that if that's positive, then something's going on with his immune system. So I'm like, okay. So I keep asking for that ANA, ANA, and they keep telling me, well, no, mom, you know, that's on the labs we drew. You know, I'm like, no, you need to do an ANA separate. So then I said, you know, if you can't help me, then you have to get the charge nurse. By now, I'm already livid again. So I'm like, you need to get me the charge nurse or the house supervisor. Because I have to tell you guys, day shift nurses were awesome. They were amazing. Like, I can't say nothing negative about the day shift nurses. They rock. Everything my kid needed, everything I needed, they were there like right away. I try not to bug them or anything, but as soon as I knew something was wrong with my son, I would call. I just had an issue with night shift. Like, they try to give me a hard time, and it's like, no, you're not going to give me a hard time because I'm already going through a hard time. So I kept telling them, you know, I need you guys to order this. Well, no. So finally I'm Googling this and I'm like, okay. And then I Googled, you know, rheumatologist doctor. So I'm like, okay, he's here in Orange, right? And I'm like, okay, let me ask and see if we could get this doctor. You know what? I have to say, God is awesome. I asked the nurses and I said, can we please get a rheumatologist consult? And they looked at me and said, rheumatologist consult? I said, yes. I think my son has arthritis. I said, can we please? And she's like, well, we have to, you know, once all the residents get together and they start talking about, you know, his condition and everything, I'll mention it. And then they come in, you know, because all the residents come into the room and they check him out and everything. So then they came in and they asked, Andrew, how are you doing? And he's not talking. I will show you pictures. I will post videos of him, you know, here, so you guys could see and give yourself an idea of how he was and what I went through and my husband. So as they're talking, I asked them, I said, and they asked me, Mom, do you have any questions? I said, yes. I said, can we get a rheumatologist consult? And they're like, oh, yes, you mentioned that to the nurses. And, you know, just to make you happy, we're going to get you one. Wait, to get me happy? I'm like, no, we're going to get answers. I said, that's what's going to make me happy.
Let's see how tall you are. Okay, you can give me your hand, okay? We're going to take one small step.
Doing it, baby.
See? We do it together, okay? I'm gonna go give Dad a high five.
You gonna go give Daddy high five? The rheumatologist consult, I could seriously tell you, praise the Lord, because when that doctor walked in that room, I looked at him and I said, I cannot believe it's you. And he looked at me and said, why, Mom? I said, because I was Googling you. I said, and you popped out and you're one of the 5-star doctors here in Orange as a rheumatologist. I said, you were sent. I think the Lord sent you here. And he said, Mom, we're going to be okay. He touches my son, moves his arms, everything. He says, he's swollen. I said, yes. So he explained to me everything. He said, we're going to draw lab work. We're going to do this and this. And I said, okay. I said, are we going to run an ANA test? And he said, yes, we're going to do that. We're going to do ferritin. We're going to do everything, you know, that the doctor that I was talking to was telling me to ask for. He said, once we get the results, I'm going to tell you, you know, what's going on. I said, okay. They draw him up, and sure enough, that's when he comes and tells me, your son has systemic juvenile idiopathic arthritis. That's when I said, is he going to ever, you know, come out of that? Is he going to heal? Or is this going to be something he's going to have to live with for the rest of his life? And he said, we're going to try a medication on him and see how he does. If his body responds to it, then he doesn't need to do treatment. All right, guys, so my son takes naproxen. That's what he was prescribed. And he has to take naproxen 14 mLs twice a day. I will show you guys what we go through every day with Andrew. We struggle, he cries, he does his tantrums, and I will show you a video of what happens every day with this. What? Please, can you take it, baby? So you guys saw what happens. You know, he cries and why me and why not. So he starts taking his medication and it starts working. You know, hives start going away. You know, fevers are not there anymore. And then, like close to his appointment, he starts getting hives again. And we're like, I thought it was working. So we follow up with the doctor. That same week, we follow up with him, you know, and he's in a wheelchair, you know, because he can't walk long distance and stuff. So he got a wheelchair, and I will show you guys, you know, how he is and stuff. So he started, you know, like you guys saw, he's in the wheelchair and stuff. So we take him in, and, you know, the doctor goes, oh, you know, hi, you guys. And I'm like, oh, hi, you know, how's everything? I'm like, well, you know, it started working and stuff. But now, you know, he's getting them again. And he said, well, you know, Mom, you know, we talked about if it didn't work, you know, we will have to do a treatment. I said, yes, you did. He said, so we're going to set up the treatment, you know, and it's going to be once every other week. And I said, okay. So they set up the appointment, you know, and it's every Wednesday. We go and he gets his treatment. I will show you guys, you know, a video of the first treatment of everything that they did. They explained, they were awesome, you know, because Andrew was already scared of getting poked. I have to get IVs, this and that. So I will show you guys the video. We're getting his hands ready. These are warm packs or hot packs. Ready, baby? We got it, huh? But he's still eating Cheetos. Look at your fingers.
Like it'd be great if it was one day, another one another
Love
day.
you.
That'd be.
Hold on, I gotta take this off first.
Whoa, pretty cool. Rocket ship.
I'm just gonna borrow this pillow. Keep this over a little, so I can fold this pillow and borrow it just a little bit better. So is anything hurting today? When you got up this morning at all? No? We're gonna talk you through it. This right here, remember, it's really similar to that, but it's different. It has little wings on it because we're gonna leave it in. The butterfly they just use for labs, and they put it in and they take your labs and they take it out. This one's a little bit different, but you know what? When we do it, we have to use it. There's a little tiny needle to do the exercise, but that needle comes out. And all that's left in there is a teeny little plastic straw. There's no needle left in your arm. We only use it just to give you okay?
You're really good, my friend. You got it. Okay.
I know this
Mom's
part's
right
kind of
there.
tight.
Paw Patrol's
So
on.
what grade are you? Third grade? Sometimes can make a teeny tiny little hole like that. Count or not count or? Huh? Are you able to hold still? Do you think you can hold your arm? Do you think you can, or do you think I should have someone hold your arm? You think you can? You think you can hold still? Got it right, baby.
Don't look at it, Papa.
Keep your eyes right here.
Don't
right
look at it.
Mom or your toys, okay?
You got this.
And we'll tell you everything we're doing,
It's a tiny
okay?
one, okay? Yeah.
Good job, my
Take some
friend.
deep breaths for me.
A deep breath.
Awesome.
Way to
You
go.
did so good.
Good job.
This is just salt water. You did so good. Did the J-tip work? Did you feel it, Papa? Just a little bit? Okay. Just maybe like the kind of like a little bit of the pressure sometimes. Awesome.
It's so good.
The nurses there are awesome, you guys. Like, they explained everything in detail to him. Like, everything they were going to do from the get-go, they told him. And I have to tell you, Andrew has been such a warrior. You know, and every time he sees me cry, he looks at me and goes, Mom, we've got it. Remember you said, I'm going to be fine. Look at me. I'm good. And I'm like, yes, baby, I know you're good. So he did that treatment, and you guys, like within the next day, he started walking, he started being himself, he started being silly. And he looks at me and he goes, Mom. I said, yeah, baby. And he goes, I feel like it's me again. And I said, you look like my Andrew again. And he goes, Mommy, that doctor is good. He's getting me cured. I said, yeah, baby. I go, the doctor, he goes, yeah, mommy. And him up there. And he went like this, you guys, like him up there. I said, yeah, baby. I go, he never left you. So that's how it started. And then he tells me, Mom, can I run? I said, you could try. So this is like a baby starting to walk and starting to take steps again, you guys. So he tries and he goes, Mommy, I did it. He starts running. I start being my Andrew again. I have to tell you guys, going through this, nobody knows what you go through till you see it in yourself. I thought I was going to lose my son. I thought I was going to plan a funeral for my baby. And I tell my son every day how much I love him. But now I look at him and it's like, I hug him, I kiss him, I love him. So you know what? God gave him to me, but he could take him in a heartbeat. Because that's how I felt, that I was going to lose my baby. I'm sorry if I'm crying, you guys. But just to see my baby come back, it's like the best thing ever. Just the other day, he tells me, Mom, I got in trouble in school. I had to pull my card because I was talking in class. And I looked at him and I cheered. I'm like, yay. And he looked at me, he's like, you're not mad? I said, no, baby. I said, because you're coming back. But you know, it's not right. I know, Mommy. I'm not going to do it again. As well as with the systemic JIA or any rheumatology diagnosed, you have to follow up with an ophthalmologist. My son has to follow up with one every 3 months to make sure that, you know, the arthritis is not affecting his vision and stuff. I will show you guys pictures, you know, of him going to the ophthalmologist. I'm sorry. And I hope you guys enjoyed my video. And I'm sorry if I cried a lot throughout the video. But don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Share, you know, if somebody's going through this. Andrew, baby.
Going home, guys.
I'm going home, Daddy.
Peace out. Come on.